We will get started in 1 minute. Thank you for joining.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Kathy Westcott. I'm Deputy General Counsel of the Pew Charitable Trust. I am also co-chair of the Pro Bono Committee of the ACC NCR, so the National Capital Region chapter of ACC. I am very happy to host this presentation today, or actually I'm just introducing people today and turning the hosting job over to Pat. But before doing so, I'd like to just say that I'm very excited about this presentation. I hope you leave the presentation today with an understanding of one or more pro bono opportunities that might be a great fit for you. In support of that goal, I'd like to wholeheartedly thank all of our presenters today, who will each speak briefly about the important work that they are all doing during this time of COVID and the opportunities that exist for in-house counsel to participate in that work. So to host our presentation today and to moderate, I'm going to introduce Pat McGlone. For those of you who don't know him, Pat is a Senior VP, General Counsel, and Chief Compliance Officer at Ulico since 2012. Pat has served as president of both the District of Columbia Bar and the DC Bar Pro Bono to hold those roles. He is also performed pro bono work in conjunction with the Pro Bono Center and Whitman Walker's Health Legal Services Program. Pat has been an ACC NCR member for many years and received its Outstanding Community Service Award in 2011 and a Career Achievement Award in 2019. And we felt he was the perfect person to host and to moderate today. So again, my thanks to everyone for attending, and take it away, Pat.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. I hope I can rise to that level of perfection, that expectation you've created for people. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the program. I was thinking in preparation for this afternoon's program about remarks that the recently deceased Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg gave at the Pro Bono Institute's annual dinner in 2014. She said at that dinner, "Lawyers have a license to practice law, monopoly on certain services. For that privilege and status, lawyers have an obligation to provide legal services to those without the wherewithal to pay, to respond to needs outside themselves, to help repair tears in their communities." And it's that spirit that brings us all together today. I want to thank our sponsors, the Washington Council of Lawyers, ACC National Capital Region, in particular the Pro Bono Committee, the DC Bar Pro Bono Center, and the Pro Bono Institute. And I particularly want to thank Shannon Graving of ACC NCR and Nancy Lopez of the Washington Council of Lawyers for all of their hard work in putting the program together. I've always viewed doing pro bono work as part of our obligation as counsel, as lawyers. Rule 6.1 of the DC Rules of Professional Conduct and many other ethical rules strongly encourage lawyers do pro bono work regardless of their practice setting. So that includes those of us who practice in-house. I've done many kinds of pro bono work over the years, but typically through the traditional lawyer-client interaction, where we meet with people in conference rooms, or we work next to each other at conference room tables, reviewing documents, or even last year, for the first time in many years, I stood up in court and examined witnesses and made arguments to the court in open setting. But the COVID crisis has really changed everything, and the restrictions on in-person interaction, court closings as a result of COVID, have challenged the service delivery models of all of our legal service providers. The need for services, however, has never been greater. With massive unemployment, challenges in healthcare, housing, those have all had their most dire effects on our low-income neighbors, minority communities, elderly, those living at the margins. So just when providers have had to rethink how they offer services, there's been a major spike in the need. So there's always been a need for lawyers to do more pro bono work, and that need has certainly grown in this past year. If you've signed on because you're looking for ways to help, you're in the right program. We're going to have brief presentations this afternoon from 7 legal service providers who offer free legal services on an enormous range of issues to people who cannot afford counsel, from housing to consumer debt to family law, domestic violence, the rights of children and the elderly, to public benefits, nonprofit organizations, voter protection, small business needs, many more. There's no area of the law except criminal that may be of interest to you that these organizations don't touch. So our goal today is to highlight for you the opportunities available to in-house counsel for providing pro bono services with these organizations. Now, in-house lawyers, in my experience, typically have 3 concerns about doing pro bono work. 1, malpractice insurance coverage. 2nd, the adequacy of training and mentoring to do the work. And then 3rd, perhaps they're not admitted to practice in the jurisdiction where services are needed. Be not afraid. All of the organizations presenting today have addressed those concerns, solved those problems. I'm not going to go into the details about how they've done that, but once you reach out to them, they will walk you through how they have provided those solutions to those challenges. Later today, you'll receive a follow-up email with a set of contact information and resources from each of these organizations represented here today, as well as some very helpful information from our co-sponsors, Corporate Pro Bono, a joint venture between ACC and the Pro Bono Institute, and the Washington Council of Lawyers, about how in-house lawyers can, in general, get involved in pro bono work. Each of these organizations this afternoon will have either 1 or 2 speakers, some from in-house law departments, who will provide you a snapshot of the work they do and the opportunities available to you. Each of our speakers will tell you their affiliation, and I am going to be a rigid enforcer of the clock. Each organization is limited to 5 minutes. The goal is to whet your appetite, tell you how to get involved, tell you how to reach out to the organizations. During our program, you should feel free to kibitz amongst yourselves in the chat function, but please use the Q&A function to submit any questions you have. We will hold all questions until the end. We'll try to get to as many as possible before the program concludes. And with that introduction, I'm now going to ask Darryl Maxwell, Assistant Director of the DC Bar Pro Bono Center, to tell you about the opportunities available at the Pro Bono Center. Darryl?
Thanks so much, Pat. And thanks so much to the Washington Council of Lawyers and to ACC and Corporate Pro Bono for the invite. Happy to be talking about the Pro Bono Center today. We are the largest provider of legal services here in the District of Columbia. We have been doing this for over 40 years. And Pat, you're exactly right. We have all had to figure out ways to provide service to our clients in ways that are, in some ways that were sort of easy for us to figure out, and other ways that have been a little bit more of a challenge. But there is certainly a place for all of you who are working in-house. There's a place for you. There is certainly some opportunities for you to take advantage of. I'm going to talk about a couple, and I'm actually timing myself, Pat, so I can make sure to stay right on time. I'm going to talk about a couple of different areas that we have provided service, and mainly I'm going to talk about how we provide service in this sort of environment. I'll talk a little bit about our court-based programs, and I'll just say at the outset that our neighbors here in the District of Columbia, their greatest need remains being ongoing assistance, placement of cases in the areas of public benefits, family law, housing. Taking on cases from start to finish remains the greatest need of the population that we serve here in DC. I'll talk a little bit about some of our court-based resources, as I mentioned. Our Consumer Law Resource Center that provides assistance, again, to our neighbors in the areas of bankruptcy and debt collection, as well as in trying to represent folks in predatory lending. There still remain opportunities to take cases through to completion, working with our staff and volunteer mentors to make things a little bit easier for the clients that we serve. For those of you who have expertise in these areas, we certainly need your help. I don't have to remind all of you about the impending need for housing attorneys and assistance on that front. Our Landlord Tenant Resource Center, while we are not able to receive clients, we are still serving clients on a daily basis, giving both necessary assistance for hearings that may be coming up, but also we can certainly expect there to be quite a bit of litigation moving forward and potential eviction hearings. And so for those of you who have that kind of interest, we certainly have opportunities for you to help us with that. And as Pat has already said, we will make sure that you have the proper training and education that you need. I will tell you, I'm a lawyer who works with nonprofits and small businesses. I've personally taken a disability in a public benefits case. One of the hardest things I've done, but through the assistance of the Pro Bono Center staff and a mentor at the time from Whitman Walker, I was able to sort of traverse those sort of difficult areas that were fairly new to me, to put sort of my best foot forward on behalf of my client. And I know all of you who are listening now are looking for things to do. You certainly can do the same. I will also just mention that our training docket starts off tomorrow with bankruptcy and public benefits trainings. And so we will make sure that you have all the information that you need to support the clients of the district. I'll quickly talk about a little bit about the program that I manage, our nonprofit and small business legal assistance program. We most certainly have had to make some changes during the course of the pandemic, but I will point you to, for those of you who have an interest in supporting your favorite pizza place, local business, we have a commercial leasing project where folks with some expertise in leasing have been able to support, again, their neighbors and the businesses around the corner from them. Our formerly monthly small business clinic has become a weekly small business clinic, helping folks in areas of intellectual property, employment law, leasing and real estate, as I mentioned, contract review. Our nonprofits and businesses also need ongoing legal assistance, taking matters from start to finish. So there are a number of different ways to get involved. And lastly, I'll say, if you have an area of expertise that you'd like to provide a training on, a webinar on for our nonprofits or for small businesses, that's yet another way that we've been able to incorporate the good work and expertise of our friends that are in-house. That's my time, but I wanted to make sure to let you guys know that we really appreciate your help, and we've worked with in-house lawyers for a long time. Happy to help. Thanks so much, Pat.
Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate that. I'd like to now turn to the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project. We have with us today Sarah Tenen from the organization and Catherine Saunders, who's one of our in-house colleagues at Verizon.
Thank you so much, Pat. My name is Sarah Tenen. I'm the Executive Director of DC Volunteer Lawyers Project. DCVLP is a legal services organization that uses an innovative volunteer lawyer model to provide free legal services to domestic violence victims, at-risk children, and other vulnerable individuals. We have a few primary practice areas that I want to highlight so you can get a sense of opportunities available with DCVLP. In our domestic violence program, we handle civil protection orders and family law cases. As you've probably heard or read, the pandemic has had catastrophic impacts on domestic violence victims. And the need is frankly astronomical and like nothing we have ever seen. There are opportunities for big projects like handling a case, representing a domestic violence victim and getting custody of her children in a contested case against her abuser. And there are also many opportunities for smaller, more defined projects. In a non-COVID world, our civil protection order practice tends to be pretty defined, as those cases last less than 2 weeks, and our volunteers tend to spend fewer than 20 hours on them. Because of the limited court operations and the backlog and scheduling of cases, These cases are being scheduled out very far into 2021, so we've created many opportunities for more defined projects. These opportunities include drafting motions, handling a negotiation, entering a limited appearance for a court hearing. In our child advocacy practice, which Catherine will talk about more, we serve as court-appointed guardian ad litem on behalf of children growing up in homes with abuse, neglect, domestic violence, and more. With children stuck in their homes rather than going to school in person, typical supports like teachers have been cut off. And while calls to child abuse hotlines are very low, we know that unfortunately abuse is not. A typical scenario in one of these cases is maybe mom alleges a long history of abuse by dad, and dad's been in and out of prison, and dad alleges that mom has untreated mental health issues and is self-medicating with PCP. Oftentimes there's a third party like a grandma or an uncle who's trying to help. And in these cases, you represent the best interests of the child. The role you play is really critical, both inside and outside the courtroom. In our immigration practice, we represent vulnerable individuals with asylum claims, VAWA self-petitions, U visas, T visas, and more. And the last thing I want to talk about is our clinic opportunities. In a normal world, we have 4 weekly community-based clinics and 1 court-based clinic that operates 3 times a week. And since mid-March, everything has been virtual. So in addition to our call-in clinic, 2 days a week, we staff the virtual domestic violence intake center. This is the first step for a victim who's filing for a protection order. As a volunteer attorney, you sign up for a 4-hour slot and you help victims drafting their petitions and sometimes representing them in the temporary protection order hearings. All of this is virtual. We have a great need for volunteers in all of our practice areas, but especially for this opportunity. For those of you who are listening saying, I'd love to help, but I don't know the first thing about what I would do, that's great. That's how our organization is designed. You don't need to have any experience. We have trainings that are all available online, a significant online resource library, and a DC VLP supervising attorney who's assigned to each case. So these attorneys are with you each step of the way. And while you get the experience, you work directly with the client or there to strategize, go to the virtual court hearings with you so that you can confidently and competently represent your client. I'm now going to turn it over to Catherine Saunders, who works at Verizon, to talk about her experience volunteering with DC VLP.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. It's great to be here. I'm Catherine Saunders. I'm a Vice President and Managing Associate General Counsel at Verizon. And as some of you know, Verizon is a huge proponent of pro bono and volunteering, and we've committed to dedicate 2.5 million volunteer hours company-wide by 2025. I was able to work on a pro bono guardian ad litem case with DC VLP, and it's an amazing experience. DC VLP has a great balance for in-house attorneys. They're one of the few places where you can appear in court and really handle a case from start to finish, even if you don't have any experience in that particular area. Pre-corporate life, I was a litigator and I didn't know anything about GLA work, but I was really excited to be able to get involved in this and get your hands into a case because you have a mentor who's always there to supervise and support you. My colleague and I were appointed by the court to serve as a GAL for a 5-year-old kid in a contested custody and alleged abuse case. And we worked to represent her best interest all the way from the initial complaint and investigation through to a final custody order. As an in-house attorney, this is just a really great way to expand your skill set, and you really make a hands-on difference in a positive way for a kid because you get to know that child and really be able to represent their interests to the court, and particularly little ones, they can't always do that for themselves. The time commitment is super reasonable and you're able to balance it with your day job. And I would just strongly, strongly urge other in-house folks to get involved. These are incredibly fulfilling cases and it's a really good experience for a pro bono matter.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Sarah. I now want to turn to Sarah McGuire of BAE Systems, one of our in-house colleagues, and Teresa Lee of Kids in Need of Defense to talk about KIND.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Teresa Lee. I'm a senior attorney with Kids in Need of Defense. I work with the DC Virginia field office. So KIND is a national nonprofit organization, and we have offices throughout the United States and now in Mexico, so that's exciting. And we exist because there's no right to counsel in immigration court, even for children. So we at KIND, we work towards our mission of ensuring that no child appears in immigration court without high quality legal representation. And the only way we can do that is to connect children with amazing attorney volunteers such as Sarah. I'll turn my time over to her in a little bit so that they can obtain representation that way. COVID has complicated, as it has for a lot of other things, it has complicated matters a lot, and immigration courts are plowing ahead and scheduling hearings without much, kind of in terms of scheduling, without much consideration as to what could be happening on the ground and a child's ability to obtain documents, get things signed, notarized, things of that nature. And so KIND, we have a range of pro bono opportunities available. And these are all for unaccompanied children. Unaccompanied children under the federal laws are defined as a child who has arrived in the United States without a parent or a legal guardian. And so all of the children that KIND works with are eligible for some form of humanitarian-based immigration relief. And so a lot of our cases, you can work on range of cases from something called SIJS, Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, which is a form of humanitarian immigration relief for children who have been abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or both of his or her parents. And this is a unique opportunity to gain some familiarity with family law. But you can also be representing a child who's eligible for asylum. And asylum is a humanitarian-based form of relief for individuals who have suffered persecution in their home country and therefore can't return to their home country. There are other kinds of humanitarian immigration relief that we work with, but those two are the main ones. You don't need to have any familiarity with immigration law. I think a lot of the attorneys who volunteer through KIND actually come to us without much of any immigration practice in their background. And so a KIND mentor is assigned to each and every single child. And so volunteer attorneys who take a case through us will never be left alone to fend for themselves. We're here to serve as your consultant along the way. And we have regular trainings throughout each month that touch on various immigration issues that are current and that have to do with these kinds of cases. And the last point I wanted to touch on before turning things over to Sarah is that we do provide malpractice insurance. We have a rider that covers attorneys providing pro bono representation to clients through KIND. And whether it's secondary to a firm or a company malpractice insurance that serves as primary, or can serve as the primary for those attorneys who may not have a primary policy. So I'm going to turn things over to Sarah, who is a wonderful volunteer attorney.
Thanks, Teresa. So I volunteer with KIND. I represent a kid, an unaccompanied minor from Guatemala. I have wanted to get back into pro bono and hopefully direct representation since I've been at my company, but I had a hard time getting my head around it. And then I saw a presentation that KIND did, and it was just great. It was good timing. It was actually before the ice boxes and all the terrible news about family separation came out. But I really wanted to try to do something about what I see as just completely enduring shame of our country for the way that we're dealing with these poor people. So I volunteered to take a case. I want to echo what Teresa said. I'm a corporate lawyer. I did litigation a long time ago, but I know nothing about immigration. KIND has tons of resources to help with that. It's really, a lot of it is client management and interviewing. So if you have those skills, that's really helpful, and writing is always good. Also, I'm only capable of doing one at a time. And there's a relatively long-term commitment depending on your kid because of how slow the system is. But there's ups and downs for me. Like there's weeks when I have no work because we got our petitions in and we're just waiting to hear. I have never had to do like a 40-hour week or anything like that. So it's always been totally manageable to do sort of in my own time. So I really want to encourage people to think about taking on a case. Also, translators. So Spanish is, most of the clients speak Spanish. My Spanish is terrible. So I have just kind of a cadre of translators I've assembled from work who are interested in volunteering. And also there's a lot of other resources in the community to help with that as well. So you don't have to speak Spanish or have any useful stuff. And then also my kid and I, if I don't have a translator available, we just type back and forth to each other on Google Translate, and that works too. So really, I encourage people to spread their wings and give it a shot, because it is just so rewarding. So that's what I have.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Teresa. We'll move on to someone who has their hands full with voter protection issues these days. Nancy Anderson of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Nancy, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. It's great to hear from everyone and also learn about these other wonderful opportunities. I am Nancy Anderson, Director of Pro Bono for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, a national civil rights organization based in Washington, D.C., with the North Carolina regional office. And we've been around for over 67 years, working with the private bar during that period on behalf of equal justice. I am actually going to briefly talk about election protection, which is one of our impact projects. And election protection is the country's largest nonpartisan voter protection coalition. Nonpartisan, key for all of you, I know. It is a coalition that's comprised of hundreds of local, state, national, legal, and grassroots organizations who work throughout the year to improve election administration and to ensure that all eligible voters get to vote and have that vote counted. During major election cycles, such as this year, we rely on volunteers to help staff two of our big efforts or parts of election protection. And that is our National Voter Hotline and our field programs. Briefly, for the field programs, we do need volunteers on election day and even for early voting. In some locations, volunteers serve as poll monitors. They report problems to the hotline, which I'm going to talk about, that they see and that voters relate to them. And then they also answer voter questions if they have any. All of those positions will be able to socially distance, and this year we're giving away masks, and they'll have election protection t-shirts. The field programs are a critical part of this effort. As states are still voting in person, states are doing early voting. There was a protest in Fairfax County, Virginia, for early voting just last week, where there was clashes with Trump supporters and voters. It was really unfortunate, but problems are happening during early voting. All kinds of problems will happen even in states with vote by mail who have drop boxes or who have limited polling places, and there will be lines. So these people are important. And for folks who are interested in volunteering for that, it can be legal or non-legal volunteers, and you should go to protectthevote.net. The National Voter Hotline is what the Lawyers Committee manages. It's the English language hotline, 866-OUR-VOTE. Our partner groups manage other language hotlines, but the National Voter Hotline is available for any voter to call across the country and ask questions, report problems. It is open 7 days a week, and it is staffed by trained legal volunteers. Who can volunteer? Lawyers, paralegals, legal assistants, and law students. What kind of questions are volunteers getting from voters? Well, they range. What used to be a simple question of where do I vote? Not so simple anymore. Questions about voter registration deadlines, which are not so simple. In some respects, it's a positive thing. Are you registering online? Are you registering by mail? Are you doing it in person? Does your state have same-day voter registration? And all of those can have different ID requirements. It's crazy. It's very difficult in many of these states to kind of figure out what the answers are. And that's what our volunteers are trained to do. They can do at any point. They are supported during their shift by captains who are experienced volunteers who can help answer volunteers' questions during the shift and or even just take over the call from a voter. And then those captains are supervised by Lawyers Committee staff who are running the hotline. Let's see real quick. Also, volunteers are supported during their shift by FAQs, which answers, I would say, 90% of the voters' questions. I think I may have said the shifts, or maybe not, are 4.5 hours long. Volunteers sign up by going to electionprotection.wetheaction.org. You're able to sign up for a shift or shifts. You're directed to the training page where you sign up for the on-demand training. You complete the volunteer profile, and then you wait to get emails from We the Action, which will include reminders and the link to the training, which the volunteer gets around a week before their actual first shift. Need. What kind of need do you have? Right now, we have 100 volunteers per shift. We are looking for, well, I'll just give this comparison. In 2008, which was the biggest program we had up to this year, we had 6,000 slots or volunteers that we needed for the hotline during the election cycle. This year, we need 20,000. 20,000. We've filled about 15,000, but we have a long way to go. And in terms of call volume, just yesterday, which was National Voter Registration Day, we received over 1,000 calls. And we actually expect that number will probably dip down for a couple of days, but will continue to build, particularly as registrations and more questions come in about vote by mail. It's a big, giant mess out there, as all of you have been paying any attention to the news. And we really hope you will encourage your folks to volunteer. And the opportunity will actually last after Election Day. We just are in the process of posting shifts up through November in anticipation of problems post-Election Day, which that's a whole other issue. But that's it.
Thanks. Thank you, Nancy. I'm afraid we need to move on. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to call on Megan McFeely of AARP to talk about legal counsel for the elderly. Megan, welcome.
Thanks, Pat, and thank you all who are participating today. My name is Megan McFeely, and I'm an attorney with Legal Counsel for the Elderly. And before I share about our opportunities, I just wanted to share about Legal Counsel for the Elderly. We've been in the district for 45 years, and our mission is to help DC elders live with dignity and assurance that they're not alone. And our staff consists of both dedicated attorneys as well as social workers who are committed to bridging the justice gap for vulnerable DC elders. We have about a dozen practice areas / programs, but during the COVID public health crisis, we currently have 3 opportunities to tell you about. So first is the Schedule H project, which is a project that I lead. The Schedule H project is there to assist seniors who have a low income and are spending a disproportionately high amount of their income on housing costs. And we assist these clients in obtaining a little known tax credit that's actually available as a standalone application. And that's important because many of our clients are on a fixed income and have a low enough income that they don't need to file taxes, but they can have access to this credit. And our clients often use this credit to receive, that they receive to help pay for housing costs. Some clients are facing evictions or foreclosures, but they also use it for other basic needs such as medications or groceries. And it's found to be particularly helpful to our clients during this public health crisis. So the Schedule H project, we have been conducting virtual clinics, and the format would be that you would help host that clinic or get a group together that would be able to be a part of the clinic. And you can choose a date that's good for you for the training. And then after the training, each attorney that is part of the training will just reach out to clients over the phone to do the appointment and send them the paperwork through the mail that comes back to me. So all in all, it's about 2 hours of planning, and then each participating attorney only needs to give 2 to 3 hours of time, half of which is for the training, and the other half is to conduct the appointments and help get through any potential hiccups. The second opportunity we have is with my colleagues Cheryl Miller and Christina Majewski. They help people draft life planning documents. So this is also held in the clinic format. There are several clinics throughout the year, and the clinics train people how in assisting our clients to draft healthcare and financial powers of attorney, transfer on death deeds and wills, which helps clients retain their assets within their families and be able to pass on intergenerational wealth. And once an attorney has completed the clinic training, they are matched with a client. And most of these opportunities, my colleague noted, will be available in 2021. And the final opportunity we have is through our systemic advocacy practice. So the goal of our systemic advocacy practice is to achieve systemic change for the benefit of DC's low-income seniors through partnerships with pro bono folks. So there's a wide variety of projects within the systemic advocacy practice in both the type of project that it is and the subject matters. And just for example, some of the types would be conducting legal research on recurring issues that come up in cases, helping with legislative research or advocacy, preparing flyers, FOIA requests, and many more. And some of the subject matters would be things such as unsafe living conditions, evictions or foreclosure, veterans advocacy projects, and more. And the benefit of working with the systemic advocacy project is it's not the clinic format, but actually it's great for both attorneys and non-litigators. It's also not time sensitive and usually not a huge time commitment, and you can work on it at your own pace. If you're interested in any of these, just refer to the resource list and it'll list the opportunity and the correct person to get in touch with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. I apologize for misdescribing your place of employment. I appreciate your presentation. And now we're going to move on to Legal Services of Northern Virginia. And Megan Belden from Legal Services Northern Virginia is with us here today. Megan?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. So Legal Services of Northern Virginia is your local legal aid. We've been here for 40 years, and our mission is to provide access to justice for disadvantaged individuals and families. We provide civil legal services in cases where you're not afforded an attorney to people with low income, people who are elderly, people who have disabilities throughout the Northern Virginia area. We're a high volume nonprofit law firm. We close about 6,000 cases annually, and 600 of those are done through pro bono help. So we've created a few programs to kind of give you a broad spectrum of ways that you can volunteer with our services, depending on what your interests are, as well as what you're looking for in terms of commitment. And so I'm just going to go through some of these opportunities and then discuss some new opportunities that we have in light of COVID. So some of our kind of quicker projects are our uncontested divorce vetting clinic. And that dovetails into our uncontested divorce representation. Contested divorces are huge cases. However, in uncontested divorce, where all the issues are resolved, are actually very, very easy. However, they're incredibly form heavy. They're great for transactional attorneys who are used to working with all of these forms. However, that's very, very, very difficult for clients who have low income, maybe have low levels of education, maybe they're non-English speakers. So it's times where attorneys can really be of value. We want those cases, though, that are going to pro bono attorneys to be vetted to make sure that they actually are uncontested. So we offer clinics where you could create a team and host a virtual clinic where you are speaking with a client and vetting them to see if their divorce is truly uncontested or not. If it is uncontested, it could then go to a pro bono attorney for full representation. And some of our attorneys that do the vetting also will kind of, build a rapport with the client. These clients are oftentimes victims of domestic violence, and so this divorce is really kind of the end of a long struggle to get out of an abusive relationship. And so in building that rapport, sometimes the attorneys decide to keep the cases, and we provide mentorship and training to both do the vetting and to actually take the cases. And it's a nice way to get yourself into state court and maybe try your chance at litigating, because it is uncontested. So you know that you're not going to face any opposition, but you can still have that experience. Another area that I'd like to highlight is we do have an attorney, we call our Attorney of the Day program, and that's for protective orders. Monday through Thursday, we have pro bono attorneys provide representation to people seeking protective orders based on intimate partner violence in Fairfax General District Court. And we have annual trainings. In fact, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we'll be hosting a training just in October with free CLE credit to provide that representation. We also have uncontested guardianships. Guardianships are necessary when someone wants to become a guardian over a person who is incapacitated. And for our folks who have low income who are seeking this help, it can be incredibly helpful to have an attorney walk them through the process. There are a lot of forms, and while the process is not contested, there are several steps to file legally, and an attorney can really help the client navigate that. And it's a huge help for the client, because getting a guardianship over someone means you can get them help, meaning like access to healthcare, access to public benefits, where the person doesn't have the ability to do that on their own. So it's a really huge benefit. And then one of our new programs that we are really trying to build is our Veterans Discharge Upgrades. This is more of a longer term program. We are looking for teams, and we are looking for a team to even have a champion to kind of to pioneer these cases. And what a discharge upgrade is, and the ones that we're looking for pro bono placement, they're veterans, former service members who have been discharged with bad papers, so a dishonorable discharge. However, if someone is discharged for a service-connected injury or reason, how we can possibly get their discharge upgraded. And when you upgrade their discharge, they're eligible for veterans benefits. They are technically veterans then under the law, and they're all of the benefits that apply to that. And what we are seeing is that there are veterans who have experienced PTSD due to combat, and then they're discharged for conduct that stems from that specific PTSD. It's this untreated PTSD. So it's a really huge benefit for our service members, and it's one of those situations where the process is it's long, and it's also very complicated. And it's an area though where you can just really give back to our service members. In COVID, we have changed to remote hearings, remote service delivery, and one of our projects that is stemmed due to the needs of COVID is providing mainly advice, but also potentially representation in unemployment compensation matters. There's no bar needed for these cases. So, and a lot of it is advice on whether someone is eligible, the different types of benefits that may be available to them. And also LSNV has a contact with the Virginia Employment Commission, so we can determine what the status of their case is directly from the VEC. And I don't know if you've heard on the news, but there's a lot of delay in unemployment, but also it's very difficult to contact them. So we are able to kind of bridge that gap, and clients are just so grateful to know what's going on with their benefits that they really need during this pandemic.
Megan, I need to ask you to wrap up. Thanks.
Well, that was actually the end. So thank you all so much for all your time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Megan. Before we move on to our final presentation, I do want to remind folks that you have the Q&A function available to you if you'd like to pose a question to try and handle before we conclude today. So next I'd like to move to Maryland Legal Aid, and I'm inviting Amy Petkosik and Julianne Tarver to present.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us today. We'd like to start today by asking you to recall some familiar songs like Stairway to Heaven,
Family Affair,
Walking on Sunshine,
Good Vibrations,
Stand By Me,
Dancing in the Street.
Now, what do all those songs have in common? Well, we promise you can experience all of those things if you work as a volunteer with Maryland Legal Aid.
Maryland Legal Aid is the third largest firm in Maryland, the largest free legal services provider in Maryland, and we have 12 offices, including ones in Montgomery County and Prince George's County. We have a focus on human rights, and we really focus on matching clients and pro bono attorneys, so you'll keep coming back time after time.
Maryland Legal Aid practices all areas of civil law, so we would pair you as a volunteer with family law, estate planning, housing, especially with pending evictions, consumer law, criminal record expungements to help with employment, employment law, and name changes for clients. We'll provide the training and mentor you with each of these areas, so there's no prior legal experience necessary and you will survive.
If you are barred in any state, we can help you get barred in Maryland and pair you with the perfect case. Whether at a public school clinic, workforce site, virtual assistance with a will for a veteran, or a virtual expungement clinic, sign up to volunteer. We want to hold your hand along the way.
So we really hope that you can't help but fall in love with Maryland Legal Aid's Pro Bono program because we like you just the way you are. And we look forward to having each of you volunteer with Maryland Legal Aid's program and our clients. Join us because our Pro Bono program would love to be part of your world. And we are really excited, especially in this time of COVID, to offer in-person and virtual volunteer opportunities. So thank you for having us today, and we look forward to interacting with many of you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. And I want to thank all of our presenters for taking time out to present to our in-house colleagues today. We do have a couple of questions. A couple of folks have asked whether there will be resources circulated that have contact information for the organizations. And yes, there will be. Each of our participants or each of you who's participating this afternoon will get an email with a resource list that has information about each of the organizations, and you can reach out through their websites or through the contact information that we'll provide. We'll also be circulating a copy of resources from Corporate Pro Bono and from the Washington Council of Lawyers. Corporate Pro Bono, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, is kind of a joint operation or a joint effort by ACC and the Pro Bono Institute to encourage and facilitate pro bono work by in-house lawyers. The resources that CPBO has put together over the years are really quite a marvelous starting point for in-house lawyers and law departments who want to become involved in pro bono work. There are really an enormous number of tips and draft policies and whatnot that will tell you, how to get involved in pro bono, how to address the malpractice and bar admission issues, how to start a law department pro bono program and get all of the management and lawyers involved. So I recommend that you take time out to look at the CPBO resources that will be circulated this afternoon. I'm going to look in the Q&A now and see if there are any other questions that have been posed that have not been answered. One of the questions that came in was whether or not any of the legal services organizations partner with both law firms and in-house departments to have a three-party partnership so that the legal service provider, a law firm, and the law firm's in-house clients can work together. I do know that the DC Bar Pro Bono Center, in some of its individual representation matters, has done that. And I would invite any of the other organizations represented today to just raise their hand if they have experience in partnering with both law firm and in-house organizations together. Anyone? I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody volunteering, but I do know the DC Bar Pro Bono Center has done that. And I would encourage you in-house lawyers to consider partnerships with your law firms. In my experience, and we've had a partnership with one of our outside counsel. In my experience, the outside counsel firms are eager to have partnerships with their in-house clients to further build that relationship.
Yeah, and Pat, this is Sarah. I'm not at an org, but that is true. I know I saw a lot of in the chats, a lot of the orgs were saying they do partner with law firms, and law firms, that's something I'm considering particularly for my next matter because it just helps with resources and things like that. So
right.
There was also a question about licensing. Did you see that one, Pat?
I did, and I can speak to the DC rule on that. In the District of Columbia, if you're not admitted to practice in the District of Columbia, but you are handling a pro bono matter that comes from a legal services organization and are also working under the supervision of a lawyer barred in the District of Columbia, and you are not considered to be practicing in the district without authorization. So that really addresses the bar admission question, and the DC Bar Pro Bono Center always matches a DC barred lawyer with a volunteer who's not admitted to practice in DC, either through one of their mentors typically or through another volunteer. I don't know if anybody's knowledgeable about the Maryland, Virginia rules. I suspect they're similar.
Yeah, and I think one thing too is I wrote in the chat that I have a DC and a Virginia license. So I asked for a Virginia or DC case instead of a Maryland case. I think that particularly in our jurisdiction, it's easy to sort of find a place where your license works. But I think the orgs really are willing to work with lawyers from licensed anywhere to try to make it work.
Right.
In Virginia, we will have attorneys pair up, one who is Virginia barred and one who's not Virginia barred, on cases to do either the uncontested divorce screenings or to do the even like an uncontested divorce or uncontested guardianship. So they have both have client contact, they can draft the documents, but we'll have them team up on the actual pleading and representation.
The malpractice insurance often works in a similar fashion. That is to say, the legal services organizations that have presented here today and really most others have malpractice insurance that will cover volunteer lawyers, including any in-house lawyers who are volunteering. And I would also encourage those of you from in-house departments to investigate whether your company has what's called employed lawyers coverage, which is either a separate coverage that can be purchased by a corporation or a rider to your D&O or E&O policy, which provides malpractice coverage for the in-house lawyers, and oftentimes either does automatically or can be expanded to cover any pro bono services rendered by the in-house lawyers. In my experience here at my company, our employed lawyers coverage is really quite inexpensive. It does obviously provide some protection for your regular work, but also will provide you protection in connection with pro bono services. So I will see if there are any other questions that we have not yet gotten to. And I think we may have addressed all the questions that have come up. Well, I think I'll provide some summary comments then before we close out. As you can see, these organizations provide really a wide panoply of opportunities to become involved. You do not have to be a litigator. You do not have to appear in court to do pro bono work. You can do transactional work. You can do governance work. You can do intellectual property work. You can do all manner of family law, domestic violence. There's such a wide range of civil matters that are available to in-house volunteers through these organizations. I guess another thing I would say in closing is that given the kind of environment we're in on a national level these days with greater focus on racial equality, income inequality, and equal opportunity for all of our citizens, I sometimes think of doing pro bono work as an opportunity to make my own personal contribution to trying to level the playing field for all. As you undoubtedly can appreciate, the clients for most of these legal service organizations are from low income or poor communities, often from minority communities who can't afford a lawyer any other way, and frankly are struggling to compete on a level playing field. Make a contribution to racial and ethnic justice efforts and income equality efforts and equal opportunity efforts by engaging in pro bono work. So I would encourage you to think of it in that vein as well. So with that, I think I will conclude. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I also want to thank all of our presenters. Be on the lookout for the email that you'll read this afternoon from ACC NCR, which will have that wealth of resources that I've mentioned to you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.